It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about over the weekend. Lots of headlines, lots of stories, lots of polling, lots of stuff to grab your attention, to make you think, hey, there's a big horse race going on. There's a big horse race going on, and Trump's beating Biden, another national poll. And because, look, you need the horse race, need the profit motive, need people to get all worked up and say, oh, Trump's going to win. Here's the thing. The Biden camp hasn't really even started campaigning much. They haven't really made their case yet. So it's kind of like, our mainstream corporate-controlled media needs something to blather about. And what they're talking about, a lot of right-wing talking points. And here's the thing, and this is the part that gets me. And there's a bunch of this CBS poll that I want to talk about that has grabbed my attention. And look, this has everything to do, and I blame Democrats. This has everything to do with the fact that Democrats don't compete in the spaces to talk to people. They just don't seem to do it. I don't know why. I'm not quite sure what the sense is. But right-wing media is extraordinarily powerful in this country. There are a whole bunch of cable news outlets that pander to the right. There are, entire networks of podcasts that are completely put out. On the left, not funded, hardly at all. And this is where you go, rich people don't spend money that they know they're not going to get a return on. And, well, the billionaires on the right, they know where the return is. They know if they can keep the American people all lathered up and angry, profit. And this is one of those things where you go, Democrats need to do a better job of messaging. You need to do a better job of having platforms for messaging. Because here's the weird thing, and I've had numerous conversations over the last several weeks with people who are going, the economy sucks. Biden's destroyed the economy. And I go, do you remember when everything was shut down? Do you remember that? Do you remember the last 30 years of struggling? Did you forget that, we've been having a hard... Did you forget what Trump voters were saying in 2015 and 2016? Did you forget all of that? Because here's the thing. When Trump was president, he didn't make their lives better. No, they're still angry. Go ask them. They'll be happy to tell you. In fact, I know lots of Trump supporters. They're still angry. And the thing is, I know a bunch of them, and they've gotten really good raises over the last year. Their pay has gone up by a lot, and still angry. And still angry, and it's Joe Biden's fault because it's what they hear all day long. It's what they're spoon-fed. It's all around them. So if all you hear is Joe Biden sucks, Joe Biden did this, it's all Joe Biden's fault, you begin to buy it. And look, I'm not saying people are stupid. I'm saying they're hearing one side of the story. So if all you hear, if I get you in a room and I get to talk to you for hours and hours and hours, eventually you're going to come around to my side of things because naturally you're going to, well, it must be true. And if you have an entire infrastructure set up on regurgitating that message time and time and time again, reinforcing that message time and time and time again, setting up a think tank network to come up with bad ideas and bad information so that you can, through your talk radio and cable news, continue to hammer it out there. And then, of course, the mainstream corporate-controlled media, they need something, and they're lazy. They don't want to go out and work for it, so they just take what's given to them by the right-wing media. And then we're surprised that the headlines are all skewed and focused in that direction. And look, I don't want to sound conspiratorial, but this isn't a conspiracy. This is reality. This is the reality of why a rich billionaire or a bunch of rich billionaires would spend money on funding messaging vehicles. because they know the return on investment. On the right, they do this. On the left, not so much. And as I said before, on the left, they try and fund elections. They fall in love with people. They get behind candidates and they send huge amounts of money to candidates because we're going to finally take out Mitch McConnell or Lindsey Graham, and it's never going to happen. But there's hope. Instead of taking that money and burying it into infrastructure so that you could actually compete for the hearts and minds of people on policy. Because here's the part that blows my mind. And I'm going to talk about this CBS poll that just because they asked a bunch of questions. They asked their registered voters, and again, a lot of these polls are skewed by who your target demographic is, where you did them, what phone calls you made, all that stuff. But it's an interesting little exercise because they asked, how is the economy under Trump? And people look back, and during Trump, 65% said, it was good. The current rating is 38%. So this is the thing. They thought it was great while it was going on because understand, the Obama economy was handed to Trump doing pretty well. And then they heated it up with massive tax cuts for the wealthy and an infusion of money into the economy by deficit spending. Now, here's the weird thing. Because again, this is, I remember Econ 101 where you deficit spend in times of trouble. The first 2 years of first 2.5 years of the Trump times are okay, pretty good. They were, because the economy was doing well, coming out of Obama. The policies were coming along. Did you need to deficit spend? No. That's when you're supposed to pay down the debt that you deficit spent in times when they were bad. Bush left office, the economy's in a mess. We had to deficit spend to keep the economy from collapsing. And then we slowly worked out of it. Handed Trump a pretty good economy. And Trump heated it up with massive deficit spending. And again, this is where my Republican friends, who right now seem to care about debt and deficits, I think should sit down. Because they were all in favor of these huge tax cuts and all of this deficit spending when it was their guy doing it. And without really understanding what the policy perspective was and where that money went. Money went a lot to rich people. A little trickled to the working class a little bit. But the mass of it went to corporate America and the wealthy. And that didn't trickle down. That just got hoarded. And we made the wealthy wealthier. And good for us. We've got more rich people than anyone else on the planet. But the thing that gets me is you go back and you think about what they did, and it didn't help working people. So this other question that this CBS News poll asked is, their policies. Will their policies make prices go up or prices go down or have no effect? Well, because we're told to believe Biden inflation. Biden, obviously, they said because of Biden's policies, prices are going to go up. Trump 34% said they would go up, that they would go down 17% for Biden, 44% for Trump, because magically Trump is going to figure out how to make the prices go down. I think the people who got it right are the people who said there's no effect. Biden, 27% of people said no effect with his policies are going to up or down. 22% said the same thing for Trump. Because corporate America does this. It's the greedflation that we've gotten kind of used to. Now you go, will Trump come in and crack down on them? No, not even a little bit. And this is where I come back to. It's the reinforcement from the right-wing media that keeps saying, no, Biden, it's all Biden's fault. Like there's a magic switch in the White House that you go, I want inflation. No president wants that. Oh, but it's his policies, Rick. He spent money investing in infrastructure. He spent money reshoring manufacturing. He gave poor people $1,400. Never mind the fact that Trump gave a lot more than that. But never mind reality. Another thing that grabbed my attention in this poll, they asked, who fights for people like you? Is it Biden or is it Trump? And interestingly enough, more people thought Donald Trump was fighting for people like them more than Biden, which is interesting because Trump has shown time and time again to care about no one but Trump. Look at all of the people in his cabinet who have been thrown completely under the bus and are going to be bankrupted or jailed or who knows, careers ruined because they had association with Trump. Look at Mike Lindell. It just is what it is. But it's that perception. It's what we're constantly told. What's hammered into our ear all the time. It's what we're spoon-fed with. You know, those Trump policies, they care about you. Because remember, and this is what I said back in 15 and 16, Trump has got his finger on something that is real. Working people are struggling. Working people are having a hard time making ends meet, keeping a roof over their head, food on the table, shoes on the kids' feet, the whole 9 yards. He tapped into something, that real anger. And what's interesting is we seem to forget that anger. Well, some of us. Some of us who are saying, well, you know, things were better under Trump, and Trump really cares about us. What did he do during his 4 years that made your life better? Nothing. There was a lot of show. There was a lot of flash. We had infrastructure. In fact, Infrastructure Week was a joke. We had Infrastructure Week so often, it was literally a joke. Because nothing got done. We had some photo ops, some cute photo ops. You know, Trump wearing a big hat or, you know, driving a truck or doing all kinds of weird stuff. And it was all about him. It wasn't about actually fixing the country. And this is why the other question that they asked, you know, who has a vision for the country? Does Biden have a vision? Does Donald Trump have a vision? And Biden was split 50-50. The registered voters that they polled, 50-50, Biden has a vision for the country. Yes, no. The Trump folks, 63% said Trump had a vision for the country. And I'm struggling with what that vision is, because remember, they wanted to repeal and replace Obamacare, right? The Affordable Care Act. And we never did get to see what the replacement was. He had a magnificent, a beautiful, a perfect, an incredible healthcare plan. It was going to cover everybody. It's going to be cheap. It's going to be fabulous. Infrastructure. He had a wonderful plan. He's going to do it all. Got nothing. Never saw a plan. And we can talk education, we can talk healthcare, we can talk all that stuff. There was never a plan. There was nothing there. There was a crummy sales job. There was a con job, but nothing there. And the reality is he's not Mr. Art of the deal. He's made a lot of crummy deals. But we want to believe, and I had this conversation with somebody the other day. We want to believe that someone cares about us. Because again, we've been told by the right-wing media that Joe Biden doesn't care. The guy who's probably closer to all of us than Trump is by a mile. A guy that put on those Obama comfortable shoes and walked a picket line while Trump had I don't know what that was, at a non-union employer where they had the employer out there with auto worker signs. I don't know. But what I do know is we're in a weird moment where nothing seems to be really honest. For instance, they asked in this poll, should Trump get credit for overturning Roe versus Wade? Now remember, Trump has come out himself and said he did it. He alone. He overturned Roe versus Wade. And I got to tell you, I think he did. When you put three crazy people on the Supreme Court who are ideologues, who you know were tried and true tested to make sure that they do what they're supposed to do, which is overturn Roe. The people polled said only 19% said he should get credit for it. 33% said he should get blamed for it. And 48% said neither. Now, if you're on the radical right, you should be going, no, he gets credit for it. And if you're on the left, you should be, no, he's to blame. How do you come up with 48% saying neither? That's why I don't have a lot of faith in these polls. But it is a snapshot of what we're being sold. And that's the important part here. It's what we're being spoon-fed. That there's this horse race going on. And I got to tell you, the legacy of the Trump administration has been the death of shame, the death of being, held responsible. Perfect example. J.D. Vance, a guy who was literally against him before he was for him, and now, well, in the bag for him, making threats. He tweeted out, quote, "I have a long memory. If you're fighting Trump and his endorsed candidates politically today, don't ask for my help in a year with your legislation or your pet projects," which means if you don't do what I want you to do, if you don't do what I say you have to do, I'm not going to do my job. Even if you come to me with the greatest idea ever, nothing for you. Now understand, this is the weird part here, because he's saying if you're against Trump, nothing for you. He, again, was against Trump before he was for him. In fact, said that Trump might be America's Hitler. Wrote that in the text. He tweeted out, and it was the cosmopolitan conservatives like Moore and Kudlow who shamefully apologized for him. Yeah, he did that. He also wrote, in 4 years, I hope people remember that it was those of us who empathized with Trump voters who fought him most aggressively. And now saying, if you're against Trump, nothing from me. What changed? What am I thinking? What am I thinking? The best democracy money can buy while it lasts? And this is, again, the weird spot of where we are and why I'm frustrated with where we are. Because, understand, these people don't quit. Our media structure is broken. It's about spoon-feeding you a narrative instead of facts. It's creating a narrative and then doing some polling to get to what you wanted. It's doing all of these things backwards. We've got this narrative we've got to sell. So it's a horse race. Biden's in big trouble, and I hope people believe that. So I hope they really get out there and vote. I hope Democrats get their heads out of their tuchuses and get moving. But we are in a very weird moment. And the hope is that we're all paying attention to what we're being spoon-fed. I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Gonna take a quick break. Right back.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
We are AFGE, the American Federation of Government Employees. We represent 700,000 federal and D.C. government workers who are the vital threads of the fabric of American life. We support our nation's military. We take care of our nation's veterans. We protect our nation's borders. We respond to our nation's crises and natural disasters. We provide services to our nation's seniors. The American Federation of Government Employees. We work for America.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, interesting piece of legislation banging around in the House in Kentucky. House Bill 500. And again, this is another one of those anti-worker pieces of legislation to chip away at what had been hard-fought gains for working people. And understand, the moneyed interest, they know what this means. If they can take and take and take, it's more profit for them. And what House Bill 500 would do is it would end the right of workers to get lunch. It would end rest breaks. It would eliminate pay protections. There's a lot of this that is it's just bad. And now, example, since 1958 in Kentucky, if you work 4 hours, you're supposed to get a 10-minute break. For each 4 hours you work, you get a 10-minute break and lunch. Somewhere in between the third and the fifth hour is kind of where they throw that out. And now they don't have to pay you for lunch, but you got to get it so that you can rest, you can do whatever. They want to do away with that. But what they say is, if you can do away with it, but you can have walking breaks maybe. You can juggle, if you can, you're working in the mill, you're working in the mine, you're working where, things are dirty and nasty. If you can, shovel a sandwich down your throat while things are happening, that's okay. But, you can't have lunch. And as I went through this, my mind, as I was reading through what the bill says, for instance, pay protections. If you work for a company that, sends you from one place to another, this would say, well, they don't have to pay you for that transportation, that time. That's on you. And it reminded me of a job I applied for years and years ago. They had a time clock at the shipping dock door. So when the trailer backed in, you hit the time clock, you were on the clock. As you were unloading, you got paid. As soon as that trailer moved away from the dock, you stopped getting paid. Now, you could stand there for an hour, 2, 3, 4. You could stand there for who knows how long. That was on you. You only got paid for the actual time that you were unloading boxes. Never mind you were there because they want you there. But you only got paid for the actual work you did. And I remember going, no, because that's too unpredictable. And they had a really hard time keeping people. And eventually they changed that because people were like, we're just not going to do it. That was 30 years ago. Now, I'm not so sure because we're looking at laws like this where they're trying to take away what have been long-standing rights. Also in Kentucky, since 1942, if you worked 7 days in a row, you got paid time and a half after that. Let's say you work 4 hours, 8, 9, 10, 11 days in a row. Those days after 7 were paid a time and a half. The idea was not to work you every single day of the week so that you have some time to be home, you have some downtime, some family time, that kind of stuff. This would take all that away. And I'll tell you, I think I might support this in a way. Also, it decreases the statute of limitations for labor violations from 5 years down to 3. Have to throw that in. But there's part of me that goes, maybe we need a swift dose of good old-fashioned Gilded Age capitalism. Maybe we need a moment of, wow, this is bad. Maybe we need hey, this is why we need a union. This is why we need a labor contract in every workplace. Maybe this is because they're not going to stop with this. This is just the beginning. This is the beginning of returning us to a very desperate time. It's what they want. It's what they've been working for. It's what they bought our court system for. It's what they're pushing legislation across the country for. And we're going to get those kids back to work too. It's why they're destroying child labor laws. It's why they're doing all the things that they're doing to make work more desperate. And what's interesting, at a time where they're complaining they can't get people to work, at a time when they say, Gen Z, they don't want to work. Well, who wants to enter into this kind of an environment? Now, do I think it'll pass? I it may pass. I think the governor will veto it. But the fact that they're putting this out, the fact that they're moving this forward is telling. And it's telling in a number of arenas. As workers are organizing, as we're seeing a resurgence of labor messaging and labor activism, even if we're not seeing a huge number of new members and union density numbers going up, we are seeing people who are looking at, hey, we should be joining and forming unions. We should be fighting for better wages, hours, and conditions. How do we do that? And look, the UAW is doing an incredible job of really pushing in this moment. They've got more than 50% of cards signed at Mercedes, which I guess Nick Saban was supposed to go speak at last week. I'm waiting to hear the fallout from that. But they're taking this moment to spend historic amount, $40 million, historic amounts of money to go and organize these manufacturing facilities, Volkswagen and Mercedes and all of those. And as Sean Fain said, look, in 2028, we're not going to come back with just the big three. We're going to come back with the big 5 or 6 because they're going to they're going to organize those places. Because corporate America has gone too far. All of the comments that I've heard coming out of places like Volkswagen or Mercedes is, we don't make decent money. We get treated poorly. We don't get enough time off. This is why I keep coming back to maybe we need to stop having laws that protect people. Because what good is having a law if people don't enforce them? And Republicans have done a great job over the years of defunding enforcement mechanisms. Defunding the people who are supposed to enforce these laws. Because I guarantee you right now, there are employers in Kentucky who are violating the breaks and the lunches and the transportation and all of that. I guarantee it's going on. They just don't have the enforcement people to do it, to keep up. So there's part of me that goes, you know what, maybe we just scrap the whole thing and let them abuse people to the point where we say, you know what, enough. Now, the part of me that goes, no, that's not a great idea because people are going to be harmed. That's where I shoot this idea down. So the hope is House Bill 500 in Kentucky gets shot down and workers there keep their protections. For our Free Speech TV audience, I appreciate you being here. Thanks so much. We'll see you back here next time. For our radio affiliates across the country, quick break. Right back.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So Nikki Haley picks up her first primary victory in Washington, D.C., and a big one, I didn't think she was going to win anything, but D.C. kind of makes sense. Kind of makes sense. She got almost 63% of the vote. Trump got just over 33% of the vote in the primary, which means she's going to she's got 43 delegates now to Trump's 247. I don't think it's going to happen, but we got Super Tuesday coming. Who knows what that's going to look like? And here to share some thoughts on Nikki Haley's big win and maybe what we can expect on Super Tuesday. Best our good friend, former Ohio Congressman and political analyst, Bob Ney, to come share some thoughts. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you, Rick.
So what do you make of Haley and the big victory in Washington, D.C.?
I agree with you. I didn't think about it when I read the headline that Haley had won D.C. I didn't piece together all the collective trauma that people in D.C. have went through for a period of time here, plus obviously January the 6th. So that makes sense. But, on Super Tuesday, as it comes up, is Haley going to all of a sudden have a shocking victory on Trump? No. Now, the D.C. thing, I want to get back to it for a second because somebody did compare it to John Kasich when he was running in the primary, former Ohio governor, and he won the state of Ohio, which was the only state he had won against Trump, and the balloons came down out of the ceiling, as if he had won the entire primary. This is different, though, because at that time, I mean, we all knew that Kasich was not going to win. It was the only state. He was the last guy to hang on. This one's different because this time, as you know, people are looking each state, including Super Tuesday, as all these states, California, Vermont, et cetera, as all these states come in, people are going to look at the percentage Nikki Haley takes, because that's probably the percentage that are out there that are not for Trump. Some are for Haley, but let's face it, a lot of this vote, like you pointed out in the District of Columbia, is not for Trump. So that's the difference between when John Kasich ran and he wasn't going to win any states. Nikki Haley is showing, I think, the party, each state, what percentage of people are really hardcore not Trump. Otherwise, they would be with him. And in the long run, because this is one of these weird scenarios of will Trump make it into the convention? Of course, he'll win with delegates, but will he make it in the convention? Will something else sidetrack him? And if something else sidetracks him, how can somebody like DeSantis say, well, you know what? You need to pick me because, I was hanging in there. Nikki Haley hung in there for a period of time. Maybe not all the way into the convention, of course, but hung in there longer than DeSantis did. And I think that's what's in the back of people's minds. It has to be.
What could derail him? You said for one reason or another. What do you see as a potential of? You're talking health. You're talking one of the criminal indictments. What are we talking about?
Well, these days, politics since 2016 has been so weird. You've been in this business forever. Strangest things have happened that never have happened in modern history. But I think there's two main things. One, President Biden potentially, let's say hypothetically, doesn't run. He decides by June he's not running. I've always argued if President Biden steps out of this election for some reason, that Trump will be right behind him, because with the new candidate, the people that are, not going towards Biden anymore at this point in time, the people he's lost, I think, would come back to the Democrat side. So that's one scenario. And again, who knows what happens in modern politics anymore. And the second is one of the trials comes up and there's a conviction, and then the polling's done, and Trump all of a sudden loses 20 or 30% of the voters. And if that happens, that puts Biden in the driver's seat and the potential for some other candidate on the Republican side. Those are two scenarios I'm not saying are possible, but hypothetically could be in today's world.
Yeah, no, anything's possible. But the trial thing, I keep saying I don't believe any of those are going to be wrapped up before the election. Maybe I'm going to be wrong, but I know the wheels of justice grind slowly. There's a lot of opportunities for delays and all kinds of stuff. I don't know that I see them wrapping up before election time.
But if one of them wraps up and he is convicted, of course he will appeal. But I think the stats where they've done these hypothetical polling stats, I think would ring true that he would then have a problem. Because if he loses 10 or 15% or 20%, that creates a problem for him.
Yeah, what do you think the chances are of Biden stepping aside? I keep hearing my right-wing commentator friends going, June, Michelle Obama's coming back. She's gonna take his place. And I think you've said that she's the one slam dunk that the Democrats have. At least I think that's what you said, right?
Oh, I have, because if something happens with President Biden's health before June, or there's some huge unexplainable gaffe that makes his polling drop and it looks like Trump's going to win, because even with Trump's indictments, he's up there obviously against Biden, and with everything else that's going on, Biden's had a problem. But if he would drop out, I have argued that Michelle Obama, now I don't say like some of the commentators, this is all pre-planned and they've sat down in a room. I think the Democratic Party, if something happens with the president, would go to Michelle Obama and say, look, you need to run. Her initial answer, by the way, Rick, most likely would be, she doesn't want to run.
No.
But then they would, push to, quote, save the Democrat Party. And at that point in time, she may say, look, okay, I'll run, and I'm going to make it perfectly crystal clear, one term only. Now, I've thrown this out to some real conservative areas, what I'm about to say. And shockingly, I would say 75% of the people come back to me saying, yeah, you're right. If Michelle Obama runs against Donald Trump, it's over with.
Oh, yeah.
It is over with. Michelle Obama will beat Donald Trump and will be president of the United States.
No, I've said a couple of times. I think they need each other. I mean, it's like the only battle that either can win. I see it that way. I think if anyone drops out, they both have to drop out because they're going to, whoever they end up encountering down the road, I think wins if they stay in.
Right. I've always said only Biden can beat Trump and only Trump can beat Biden. It's the same circle there. And that leads you to talk to people. And I do every single day. I call them regular earthlings. They're not involved in politics or the media. And I talk to these regular earthlings at random, and I'll say, hey, what are you going to do between Biden and Trump? And Rick, most of the time it's like, I don't know, close my eyes, don't vote. When you hear that consistently, then that's going to make it a 50-50 election between the two of them.
But here's the thing, and this is where, I said earlier that, the Biden folks haven't really started a campaign yet. They haven't really promoted the fact that, a lot of the legislation they got through is going to make lives better. I don't think they've done that. I don't think and I blame Democrats for not having the messaging vehicles to get out and constantly hammer on the fact that things are being done and it's because of their policies. So I think, maybe I'm hoping, as the summer comes around and as we head into fall, they start really hammering on the fact that they have done some really good things.
Yes, they are behind the wheel on it. It's been more defense, and they've been not able, for whatever reason, to put the ideas out there that they've had and the ideas that they've implemented, and they haven't been able to put them out there in a way that people grasp onto them. And whatever the issue is, if you look at it, it's interesting. People that will support a certain issue, and Biden supporting that issue, President Biden will still come out soft in the polling of, well, has he done enough on that, when he actually has? So you're right. They've got to get the message out. I'm not sure this is all about voter turnout on that message as much as getting the message out there to create voter turnout.
And this is where I say the right has done a masterful job of creating their own infrastructure, their own talk radio, the cable news, behemoth that they are, that they're actually moving the narrative that the mainstream corporate controlled media then picks up on and pushes forward. And you got to give them credit for that.
No question about it. They've done that. They've been able to do it. And I like what you just said, where it's not what the corporate mainstream media puts out there as much as what the Republicans can get out there that the corporate media grabs a hold of.
Yeah, I mean, this is the reason I think a lot of what we see, the narratives that are being spun are being spun the way they are. But Super Tuesday, does Haley win any of this? I mean, she couldn't win her own home state. Does she take any of these states? Or is this really just looking at, what percentage of the vote that she's going to pull to see where that discontent with Trump is?
I think there may be a shocker out there, but I think in general, it's looking at, what the percentage is. Look, and I'll go back to John Kasich, my Ohio, former governor. When he stayed in, everybody is like, well, what is he staying in for? Now, nobody speculated he was staying in case Trump, got convicted of something at the time. They were just like, what is he staying in for? What's he doing? And this case is entirely different. Everybody's that's trying to analyze this, including the Trump people, are looking at the percentage that Nikki Haley takes, because I don't think Nikki Haley, is the popular name of the moment in these Super Tuesday states. But if she comes out taking 30%, maybe 40% in one of the states, 35, people look at that because by all rights, Trump should be, up in the 90s, 78, 80.
So, we've talked about this before because, her name's being thrown around in the no labels, part of this discussion. Does this play for them? Or again, this being the discontent for Trump, not so much that she's popular. Do you think she goes that route, or is she going to march the Republican line?
I don't think she'll go that route. If she is not eventually selected, if he, gets in trouble towards the convention and then she gets selected, she'd do that. I don't think she would go the no labels route.
I don't think so either. Because I think she knows she's got a future down the road. And if she does the no label things, she just cut herself off at the knees.
And you just said something that's I think pertinent in her case. She has a future down the road because let's face it, she hung in there. DeSantis dropped. She hung in there. So in general, after the next election, she could be in the beginning of something for herself that would be out front and would build a quicker base for her.
Well, we'll see what happens on Super Tuesday. Thursday, it's a big week. You got Super Tuesday. You got the State of the Union on Thursday. What do you think what do you think we should see out of the State of the Union? What should Biden, do you think, hammer on?
He has to look, first of all, he has to be sharp. Let's face it. Now everybody can sit and debate.
He's old.
Special prosecutor all day long. He's got to be sharp because now this is out there. People daily talk about it. Is the president up to it? Is he cognitively okay? He's got to be sharp during the State of the Union. And I think that the president has to be, I think he has to be on defense personally. He doesn't need to mention Trump's name, but he's got to be on, president's got to be on offense personally.
Right. Not
defending, but to show what he's done and what he plans to do. And he has to address the border. That has to be addressed. This has been ginned up by the Republicans, by the media, and the president himself. He went down to the border, so he's got to do that. Of course, he's going to mention Israel and Ukraine. I know he'll do that, and that'll be automatic. He will mention something about humanitarian aid, to the residents of Gaza. We know he'll do that, yet affirm, his support for Israel. Ukraine, he's going to obviously be asking for support for the Ukraine and justify why. But he's got to have that domestic agenda too.
Right.
Again, I think he's got to be on the offense and throw it out there, and where he wants to go. Where does he want to be the next 4 years in America? But again, he has to be sharp. He has to be on. He has to show that everything that's being said is just not accurate.
Yeah, I mean, I keep saying this is the beginning of the campaign. This, I think, is going to be the launch of the campaign, and this is going to give him the opportunity to talk about, what he's done and the vision for the future. Because I look at this CBS poll, and I'm sure you've seen it. They said, who has a vision for the country? And, of the people that they polled, 50% believed Biden had a vision, 50% said he didn't. But oddly enough, 63% of the people that they polled said Trump has a vision for the country. And I'm going, did I miss the vision? Because he was in office 4 years. I still have no idea what direction he was going in, other than chaos.
Well, you know what else he does too? He does this in these campaign stops. He'll throw a new thing out there. It might not be the brightest idea, but he throws something new out there. And when I get back in, I'm going to do this. Some of them are hair raising, and then some of them are like, okay, I don't hear him harping on balancing the nation's budget because he also contributed to the deficit, but he does throw certain things out there. And President Biden has had to be on defense. So when he starts, his speech at the State of the Union, he's got to be as dynamic as he's ever been, deliver a great speech. That's part of it. That's part of the fluff. How was the delivery? Was he fluid, etc.? And that helps him quite a lot if he is. But on top of it, he's got to throw some ideas out there. Now, we know about, for example, and he's got to stress this to, bring his message out. We know about past things, about the legislation, and the transportation, and the student loans, and he's got to talk about the border. But he also needs to present, some new ideas that he's going to have out there for the people 4 years ahead of time. Because Trump does do that. Again, they might be bizarre, but he does do that.
Yeah, I mean, did you see him over the weekend? I mean, they talk about Joe Biden slipping. I don't know if you saw Trump. Wow.
Well, they're zoning in on his leg and his speech and some of the things he messes up. Obviously, he thought Nikki Haley was Nancy Pelosi January the 6th. I mean, it's out there. The presidents are recent things, with the special prosecutor's report. But you've got two older guys running here. And if you look at the polling, most of America says two older guys. Is there anybody else? That's what the polling says. And that's why it makes this contest so 50-50.
Yeah, no, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. But, Bob, as always, I appreciate the time. Great stuff as always.
Thank you, Rick.
Good stuff. Our good friend Bob Ney, former Ohio congressman, political analyst. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. Right back to wrap things up. Stick around. I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1914. That was the day that President Woodrow Wilson signed the Seamen's Act into law. The act was in part a response to the tragic sinking of the Titanic. The International Seamen's Union was demanding changes to the working conditions at sea. The job of a seaman required long times away from home and tough physical labor. The workers had few rights. The union found a friend in Senator Robert La Follette of Wisconsin. He championed a new law that set guidelines for basic safety and decent working conditions for those who sailed under the American flag. The act set the work week at a maximum of 56 hours. It established holidays for non-essential crew. The law also improved working conditions by setting standards for cleanliness and safety on board. It abolished the practice of jailing seamen that tried to desert the ship. It required that seamen be paid half of their wages during the voyage. The practice had been to withhold wages to ensure the workers did not desert the ships at port. The new law also required that 16 square feet of space be given to each worker for sleeping. It also mandated that ships should have adequate lifeboats. These last two provisions angered the ship owners because it meant there would be less space on board for cargo. Finally, the law gave seamen the right to organize into unions. Senator La Follette described the negative reaction of the owners to his law by observing, "Already the masters of the seas are beginning to threaten dire vengeance." The act was a major victory for the rights of labor on the high seas. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com. Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out our website, thericksmithshow.com. So, quote of the day. You got to love this because, look, understand, ExxonMobil CEOs have had a history of making interesting statements. Former CEO Rex Tillerson said that, climate change is real. And we're gonna use technology to get out of it. Yeah, it's real. It is what it is. We're gonna have to technology our way out of it, which means, we'll sell you bottles of air and you can drink bottled water so we can profit off of it. But the current CEO, the Darren Woods, his name, said people who are generating the emissions need to be aware of it and pay the price. That, he says, is ultimately how you solve the problem, making people pay for it. That means you, not them, No, not them. Not ExxonMobil, the number 3 largest corporation on the Fortune 500 and the largest gas and oil company in the U.S. With profits of $36 billion in 2023 off of selling you the stuff that they want you to pay for the external costs of. Yeah. Now, here's the thing. He does have some ability to take, a stance on climate because he did show up to COP28. They attended, I think he was the first an oil and gas CEO to appear at the UN Climate Summit. And this is one of those things where you go, he knows what's going on. He knows he's the problem, but it's going to be you that has to pay for it. Now, he does hit on some important parts. He said, look, we haven't had policies that they're just not aggressive enough. We haven't incentivized the right kind of actions. There are things that need to be done. And this comes, again, for me, government action. This is why we have, the investments going into clean energy. And I hope Biden will talk about this in the State of the Union. Because, look, he's actually doing something about what we've only been talking about for decades. And you may disagree with how big the plan is, or if it's, we're not. He's trying to do something that is moving us in the direction. Now, I think most people are already on the camp that by 2035 we're not going to reach the goals that were 2030, 2035. We're not going to reach the goals. And CEO Darren Wood, he doesn't think we're going to get there to net zero by 2050. So what are we leaving for future generations? What are we leaving for our kids? Now, he believes greenhouse gases are our problem, not fossil fuels, because, of course, he's the CEO of a fossil fuel company. And they're also being sued for it. So kind of lays out why you would you'd be on team greenhouse gas. But here's the thing. He's saying it out loud. You, the consumer, you, the person buying the gas, you have to pay for it because we're not investing in the technologies. We're not bold enough. We're not doing the things that need to be done. Just not. And that again comes down to who we vote for, who we put into political office, who we go pull that lever for every November. It's how we've gotten here. And finally, I want to talk about Washington, D.C. Evidently, this story has just been making me angry all day long. On Friday, I caught this story. A family had their car carjacked in D.C. They were victimized by having their car carjacked at gunpoint. The D.C. police found it, towed it to a recovery lot, an impound lot, and then proceeded, now again, this is last November this happened, then proceeded to bill the owner of the car for the tow and all of the storage fees that have compounded since November. And now they're saying, well, sorry, you've got to pay it or no car back. And then all the trouble that comes with that. The car was carjacked. This is one of those things where you go, I don't know, maybe you don't do that, or maybe the insurance company has to pay this because they don't have control and command of it. But this is the kind of stuff that infuriates people about how our systems work. Because the little guy always gets screwed. Always. The fact that this person whose car was carjacked got hit with a $2,000 bill because the car sat in the lot is, well, quite remarkable to me. Now, she said that they lowered the bill some. Said that the thieves also added to the burden of her cost by driving the car through traffic cameras, got 2 tickets in their joyride, and this all comes back to the owner. And you go, wouldn't the system go, oh, you got your car carjacked? Sorry to hear that. Maybe we will forgive it. Maybe we won't hold you responsible for all of it or any of it. Yeah, I know. This is what makes people crazy. Look, I'm a supporter of government, but sometimes they screw things up, and this is one of those. Anyway, I want to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Something I said got on your nerves, under your skin, made you think, made you angry, made you happy, made you sad. By all means, let me know. rick@thericksmithshow.com. Miss any portion of the program, make sure you grab the podcast. Wherever you get your favorite podcast, you'll find ours. As always, thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at rick@thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.